What's going on, guys? It's Brendan from Modern2Me, and today we're going to be discussing the solution to the guessing game we made in the last coding exercise. This video might end up being a little bit longer. If you think you successfully completed this challenge, then this program was probably quite a bit longer than anything else you've written so far, or at least you've written with my tutorials. So just bear that in mind, but we're going to get through it anyways. So the requirements for this exercise were pretty ambiguous. I didn't really have anything explicit, like normally I say like return this type and have these parameters, but I didn't really do that this time. I just said go off and make a guessing game. I had a couple of requirements, but nothing really technical, just kind of the fundamentals of the game. I had you must create a guessing game. Couldn't create the next Call of Duty. I told you to create a guessing game, and I said you have to give the user 5 guesses to guess a random number from 1 to 100. And if they guess incorrect, tell them if it was too high or too low, and then add in the option to play again. And then I had a note at the bottom about string input that I hadn't really covered in the tutorial. I just didn't want to trip you guys up there because that wouldn't have been fair. So I added that in there. But other than that, really just create a guessing game, 1 to 100. Okay, so if we're doing a guessing game, we know that we need input, and we know that we're going to need random numbers. So let's just import these classes right away. These are what we've been working with. Really the only two imports, import java.util.scanner for input, and then for math, import java.lang.math. And that'll be for random numbers. So we have those imports out of the way. That looks good. Let's create our scanner. You need a scanner, obviously. And we will call it input and set it equal to new scanner. And system.in. And there we go. Now we have our scanner. So there's a lot of ways you could complete this program. There are actually so many. There's so many different ways to approach it. How you can divide up methods. You could have even made another class. If you did that, props to you. That's great. But there's so many different ways to do this. But let's just kind of take it piece by piece. The first thing I think I did, if I recall right, is I knew that I needed a random number. So I made a method that would create this random number for me, so I could continually create these numbers without having to worry about the code. I would just have to call the method, and it would return the random number in the range that I wanted. So I created a private method, had to be static, because I didn't create any other classes. I just kept it down to one class, and I would call everything essentially from main or another method from main, so static, and it's going to return an int, and random num is what I named the method, and no parameters needed, and all it's going to do is return this random int. So to create this int, if you remember from the random number tutorial, you have your method math.random, and this returns that float anywhere from 0.0 all the way up to anything less than 1, so math.random, but we want the range to be from 1 to 100, so we do times 100. Let's go like this, and then plus 1. Just kind of fixing things up with the parentheses. I want it to multiply by 100 first, then we're going to add 1, and we're going to return an int. We're going to typecast it. This is the one really useful thing with these typecastings are for random numbers. So we're going to convert this float value to an int, and that's it. That's all we have to do for our random num method. And this is going to return a random number from 1 to 100 for us. So we got that down, so that's great. Now let's create our game loop. So I said you can add in the option to play again, and there are a lot of ways you could approach this, but odds are you had to have used a loop. I don't know if you did some sort of clever loop, maybe a do-while loop would have been a good choice here, but what I did is I just did a permanent while loop with the while true, so it would run forever unless we broke out of the loop with the break keyword, which we will end up doing in just a little bit. But first, I created a game method that ran essentially the whole game. So everything that is related to like the logic and the architecture of the game was in a separate method outside of main. I didn't want to build that in main. I just wanted main to be kind of the hub for the other methods. So I created this other method called game. So let's create this method, private static, just like the other one, and we're going to return a Boolean variable. I'll explain why in a little bit. And game And what we also want to pass in as a parameter is our scanner. We don't want to bother creating more than one. We already have one, and that's enough. In relation to the note, if you remember the note from the other tutorial, you could create another scanner, but there's the other way to get around it, which I touched on in the PowerPoint, and I'll also explain a little bit more later. So we just want to pass in our old scanner. And so we have this method. Now what we're going to do is, I said that you want to add in the option to have the user play again. So that's what this Boolean return type is for. If they want to play again, we are going to return true. And if they don't want to play again, we're just going to return false, and we're going to break. So that's why we have this Boolean variable here. That's gonna help us with if the user wants to play again. So let's get started creating our game. So the first thing we want the user to see is something along the lines of like, welcome to our game, and kind of explain the rules. So let's kind of get that taken care of right now. So we're going to go system.out.println. We're going to print this out, and we're going to go, welcome to the guessing game. That looks good. And now we are going to explain the rules also, and like I have been doing, we could just have a new system.out.println, but like I taught you recently, you can use this \escape character and then go \n, and now this will create a new line automatically, so everything will look all pretty. So let's say you have 5 guesses. I said that in the PowerPoint, when I outlined the requirements of the game. We're going to have 5 guesses to enter the correct. Let's hit enter. If you hit enter, oops, let's go back. Let's split this line. So if you hit enter and you have a good version of Eclipse, it's going to parse that for you. It's going to split everything up with the plus sign, which is totally legal. So you have 5 guesses to enter the correct number 1 to 100. And then let's have another new line, and we'll just leave the statement at that. That should tell the user kind of what we want to do, kind of gets the point across, not too wordy either, so it looks nice. Now let's create the integer variable, which is going to represent the actual random number that the user is trying to guess. So we have this int, let's just call it the num, like the number, the one and only, and we'll set it equal to random number, and that's going to, or random num, and that's going to set it equal to the number returned by the method that we just created at the beginning of this tutorial. Okay, and now let's create the variable for the user's guess. So we'll go int guess, set that equal to 0. The range is 1 to 100, so it doesn't hurt it just to set it at 0, and I like to initialize my variables even if we aren't using them yet, so I just set it equal to 0. And now we have to create the kind of like the logic for the user to enter their guesses. So hopefully you used a for loop. Did you use a for loop? I see a smile in there. I bet you used a for loop. So create a for loop. So let's go, instead of I, let's just go guesses. Int guesses is equal to 0. And we'll set guesses to make sure that it's less than 5. So then they'll have 5 guesses, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we will increment guesses every loop. Oops, there we go. And now this will give the user 5 chances to guess the num, the random number that they're trying to guess. It'll give them 5 chances. So now what we want to do is we want to print out how many guesses they have remaining. So let's go system.out.printf, and we'll say you have %d tries remaining. Nothing tricky. And then we'll just do a new line here. And for our argument, we're just going to pass in guesses. Or actually what we're going to do is we need to do 5 minus guesses. And that's just a little kind of like math that you kind of need to just, I don't know, if you're good at math, it's kind of intuitive. So you have 5 guesses and you're subtracting kind of from the reverse direction because the for loop starts at 0. So on the first run, this is going to say you have 5 minus 0. So it's going to say you have 5 tries remaining. Then when the second time this loop runs, it's going to say it's going to be int guesses is equal to 1, and then it's going to be 5 minus 1, so 4, and it's going to say you have 4 tries remaining. So it's just kind of how like the logic behind that math works. It's just 5 minus guesses. Okay, looks good. Now let's prompt the user to enter their guess. So we'll say system.out.print and enter a number. Okay, oops. And that'll tell them to enter a number. We already told them we want it to be 1 to 100, so we have that figured out. And now we'll set their guess equal to in.nextInt. Okay, there we go. So now we have their guess inputted into our scanner, or from our scanner. And now let's test to see what kind of number this guess is. This is where we need to check to see if they won, too high, too low. Let's go through this logic right here. So if guess is equal to the num, so in other words, if they got the number right, if they guessed the correct number that they needed to, we will have it return true. So if it returns true, it's essentially going to tell our compiler, really just tell us in the context of our code that they won. So this is what that Boolean variable does. It's going to return true if they won and false if they lost, and then we can try to decide if we want them to play again from there. So it's going to help us with that one portion of the requirements to add in the option to play again. This is going to let our main method know whether we won or not. So return true means we won. Cool. So now the next thing we need to test is if it's too high or too low. So we're going to go on from this and type else if. So if the guess isn't the number, and then if guess is greater than the number, so that means it's too high, we are going to output that it's too high. Hey! So we'll system.out.println too high. Okay, looks good. And so now there's only one other option. If the guess wasn't the number, guess wasn't bigger than the number, it's going to be lower than the number. So we don't really need to bother testing for this. You could if you wanted to, but there's really no point because we know that that's the only option left. So we'll go system.out.println and we'll print out too low. So that means that the number was less than the random number that we set the number equal to be. Okay, that looks good. So we have our little if statements all set up, and if it busts through these and it doesn't return true, that's another thing this return true does. It breaks out of this for loop because you're just leaving the method altogether. So when you leave the method, it just quits this for loop also, and so you don't really have to worry about it trying to go through more guesses after the user actually guessed the right number already. So that's good, but if it doesn't return true and it goes through these, it's going to keep going on with this for loop until they get over 5 guesses. So what happens is if this method doesn't return from within this for loop, if it doesn't return true from there, and we manage to complete the for loop and get all the way out of it, we know that they lost. We know that they didn't actually guess the number. So let's print that out. Let's go system.out.println. We'll just print out you lose. Uh-oh. Sucks for them. That's okay. 5 guesses isn't a lot for 1 to 100, so that's good. And then let's just print out the actual number just so they can know how close or how far away they were from actually guessing it. So we'll print out the number was %d, and then just print out, you got it, the num. And that'll let them know that what the actual number was. Okay? And let's just have a new line right here just because it might make it look cleaner if they play multiple times, and we are going to return false because unfortunately they did not win and they got to play again if they want to win. Okay, so that looks good. That looks like a good game method. One more thing, I didn't want to talk about it till the end, just so it kind of looks nice, just some polish onto the game. We're going to test if guesses does not equal 4, we will use this chunk of code here. Otherwise, if guesses is equal to 4, that means you have 1 try left, and it wouldn't make sense to say you have 1 tries remaining. That's just a grammatical error, and we don't want that in our program. So we're just going to print this out. System.out.println. We are going to say you have 1 try remaining, and we have to type that just explicitly, just so it looks nicer, and we don't want it to say we have 1 tries remaining. That looks awful and unprofessional, and we don't want that to happen, so we're not going to let that happen. So we didn't. Okay, so that's all there is to our game method. That's really the logic behind it. Now the last thing we have to add is this play again, the play again function, that functionality in our game. And we also have to kind of actually call this game method. So we'll call game, pass in our input, and now we're all happy and good, right? Well, actually, I'm going to approach this another way. I'm just going to put if, and then in this if statement, I'm just going to have my game method be right in there. And this is going to call a game method, it's going to run everything like normal, and then when it returns its return value, if it returns true, this if statement's going to run. And if after this after this method runs, if it returns false, this isn't going to run. So what this is saying is if, really, essentially, if the user wins is when this if statement's going to run. So if the user wins, what do we want to do? We want to print out that they won. We might as well congratulate them. System.out.println, and we'll say, you got it. Nice job. You're awesome. And then congratulations. That looks good. And let's go a new line. And then we'll say, play again soon. Join us again. You can say adios, hasta luego, whatever language you speak, go for it. Print out whatever you want. Just let them know that they won. And now if they lost, let's add in this functionality to let them play again. System.out.println, we'll say play again. Enter yes or no. Okay. And now let's create a separate method to kind of help us organize our code and let us figure out if the user wants to play again. Let's just kind of divide this task up here between the methods. So let's create another method. Just go private static again. And this method is also going to return a Boolean. And it's going to return true if they want to play. Otherwise, it's going to return false if they don't want to play. Let's just name it play again. And we also need to pass in the scanner, just like we did for our game. Looks good. Okay. So now, like I was saying with that note, I feel bad. I hope you guys kind of understood what I was trying to say by that. If you want to use the same scanner to get string input and to get integer input, it gets kind of messed up. So we've been using it to get integer input. So we've been kind of bypassing a little bit of the input we've actually been entering. The way input works is you're going to enter something like, let's say you type 5 and then hit enter. What the computer detects it as is you hit a 5 and then it detects the enter key. So that's kind of the string it detects. But when you're getting next int, when you use that next int function or method from the scanner, it's only using this 5. It's not taking any of this enter portion. So that is still left on the keyboard. So if you try to call the next line method as well as using the integer, so if you call this next line function after you type, the user types yes, but this enter portion is still there, it's still left because the computer skipped it with the int values. So it's going to detect this enter key, and this is going to be the string it picks up. So you're going to get left with a blank string if you don't somehow kind of reset the input. So that's what you had to do. You had to reset the input, and that's what I didn't try to trip you up. I tried to catch you almost by saying, all right, this is kind of a little trick, and this is how you need to approach it. So what you need to do is you just need to call that next line method. You don't even need to set, it returns a string. You don't even need to do anything with the string return. You don't set it equal to anything. You just call in.nextLine, and that's all you have to do. Okay, and now it's kind of weird, but like I said, let's create a string called response, and you just set it equal to in.nextLine again. So let's just go back up here, we're going to see that it's going to say play again, enter yes or no, and then we're going to call our play again method with input as the parameter. And so it's going to say play again, enter yes or no, and it's going to go down. It's going to have this prompt right here, but this prompt is going to get executed right away, because after entering integers, this is going to get executed right away and register kind of as a blank string. And then it's finally going to ask the user to enter input, and the user is not going to notice that these are getting called twice. It's only going to see it once, and if this first one wasn't here, then it would not even give them the chance to enter input, and the program would just close right away, because it would act as if the user entered no as their input. So we don't want that to happen, so that's why we call that twice. Hope that kind of makes sense. That was kind of a long explanation, but hopefully you kind of see why now. And now let's test this input. Now that we've got them to actually enter input correctly, we'll type if the response, and we're going to set it equal to 2 lowercase, so 2 lowercase. So just in case we don't want any discrepancies like I was talking about in the string tutorial, we want everything to kind of be uniform, so we're going to have it all be lowercase, and then we need to use the dot equals method. Remember, we can't do the equals, equals, that doesn't work. We need this equals method to test strings, and if it's yes, remember all lowercase, because that's what we have our method being, we are going to return true, because this means that they want to play again. They entered yes, so we're going to return true, and if not, we're just going to return false. If this didn't detect this as true, then they entered something other than yes, so we're just going to assume that they don't want to play again. Okay? So now we have this. Now we need to actually test this. We can't just have it be, we can't just call the function and not use its return value of true or false. That was the whole point of having the method. So we're just going to do the same thing we did with the game if statement. We're going to just have this play again method be right within this if statement. Okay, so now we have if they wanna play again, but let's actually have it be if they don't want to play again. And what you might have done is well, depending on how you structured your whole program altogether, you might have done something totally different than this. But you could do if this is equal to false, or like not equal to true, because it's returning that. But remember, like we did with this first one, you can just have this be right within the if statement. And another cool trick, if you want to totally invert the input that you're doing, so if this was returning true, if you just type the exclamation point before any sort of logic like this, it's going to invert it. So if it returns true, this is going to be false, and if it returns false, then it's going to be true. So essentially what this is saying is if they don't want to play again, we are just going to break, and what this is going to do is, as just like if they won, it's going to break out of this while loop, and they're going to be quitting the game. They don't want to play anymore, so they're breaking out of the while loop if that is turning out to be false. So we're going to print out see you soon, and then make sure we close our input.close. Okay, and if it returns as true, this if statement isn't going to execute, and it's going to go back, and looky here, we have this while true loop, and it's just going to run this while loop again. So it's going to go back, and it's going to go back and run our game method. So that's kind of why everything is divided the way it is. That's the way I thought it would be an effective and efficient way to organize the program. It's a 73-line game, so that's not bad at all. Not too bad. Let me know how you guys did it. If you did everything like this and it worked, let me know. But let's play our game, you know? Spent all this time explaining it to you guys. Why don't we play it? So it says, welcome to the guessing game. You have 5 guessers to enter the correct number, 1 to 100. You have 5 tries remaining. Okay, what do you guys want to guess? Let's go 50. Too high. You have 4 tries remaining. Alright, let's be ambitious. Let's go. I'm feeling 15. Too low. Okay, too low, yeah. Too aggressive. I was too aggressive there. 45. Too high. 35. Still too high. Uh-oh. 22. Too low. Oh, the number was 23. I was so close. That would have been so cool. Alright. Oh well, we lost. So it asks us if we want to play again, enter yes or no. If we enter yes, uh-oh, here we go again. We're gonna play again. So let's see if I can try to get a win here. Let's see. Alright, nice. I won the game. It took me about like 5 tries. So, you know, tell me if you can get it on your first try, that'd be sweet. But okay, so got it on our first try, and it says, you got it, congratulations, play again soon, see you soon. So as you guys can see, it obviously registered as true for that game input method, and it just broke out of the while loop and jumped right to the see you soon, and it didn't ask us to play again. Now let's just try that one more type of input we can get, or one more kind of like path our program can take is if the user enters no. Let's enter just a whole bunch of random numbers. Okay, the number is 12. Play again. If we just type no, it's just going to say see you soon, and we're not going to play again. So there you guys have it. Oh my gosh, that was really long tutorial, by far longest tutorial. I hope this all made sense to you. If you have any questions, anything wasn't clear, leave a comment, email me, go to my website. I will hit you back as soon as possible if there's something you're confused on. And hopefully I helped you guys out and you understand kind of how to make a game. This is really the logic to make a game with this while loop. There's a lot of different ways to enter this while loop. Sometimes there's like you just have this game input right within here. You might just execute it right there. There's a lot of different ways to approach it, but this is kind of the basic game logic you might use in your own games. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you loved this coding exercise. This is really important. Big stepping stone for you. Big stepping stone in your programming career. And I'm going to see you guys in next tutorial. Peace out.